Most freelancers don't quit because they failed, they quit because they burned out. They're overworked, underpaid, and stuck saying yes to anything that comes their way just to survive. I know this because I've lived it. Early on in my freelancing career, I may have looked successful from the outside because I was always working, but behind the scenes, I was exhausted because I had to hustle for every dollar I made, and I was always worried about the next dry spell. It was only after I made some strategic changes that I realized that freelancing doesn't have to be this fragile, exhausting thing. You can build a business that pays you well, pays you consistently, and feels good, but only if you stop relying on one-off projects and start laying a real foundation. This video is the first step in a realistic freelancing roadmap. It's not about tips and hacks. This is a real strategy that I use to build a stable business that brings me consistent income every month without consistently pitching or slimy tactics. So, how do you start shifting out of burnout mode? These are the 5 steps that helped me. First and foremost, start with money clarity. Now, this might sound crazy, but on my road to burnout, I didn't know how much I needed to be making every month. As a result, I didn't know how many clients I needed or exactly how much work I needed to do in order to make ends meet. Some months I would totally overwork myself, and it was kind of a vicious cycle because I would burn myself out. And then when I did need to make money, I just felt like I didn't have the energy or the bandwidth for any of it. I had to sit down and crunch the numbers for my personal finances to figure out exactly how much I needed to be bringing in every month. And if your goal is to quit your 9 to 5 and freelance full time, this number tells you when you can safely make that leap. I actually recommend creating 2 money goals. Firstly, your survival goal. This is how much you need to maintain your current lifestyle. The second number is your expansion number. This is what you strive for once you've reached that survival number so that you can create more freedom and flexibility in your life and your business. So you can take the vacation, start investing more, make the big purchase, whatever it is that you want to do. The second big shift I made to get out of burnout was to pitch retainers instead of projects. Because the sooner you shift from random one-off projects to retainer-based work, the more stable your income becomes. And if you're not familiar with the concept of retainers, it is just packaging your services into a monthly service. So it's like a subscription that your clients sign a longer term contract for. So you're doing the same work on repeat. Retainers give you stable income month to month, and I found that they are also better for client relationships. When you work with a client long term, there's a lot more trust and respect that's built. And of course, when you fill your client roster with retainers, you don't have to go chasing the next gig all the time. In fact, even one good retainer can change the game and give you months or even years of stable income. I've been working with a lot of my clients for over 3 years, and most of them have expanded their packages in that time. And once your client roster is full, you don't have to go out and find new clients all the time. You can focus on building your online presence and your personal brand instead. Now, I know that a lot of freelance and business coaches will tell you that in order to be successful, you need to be on platforms like Upwork and Fiverr, and that you need to show up on all these social media platforms and be putting your face everywhere. But I am living proof that that is not the case. In fact, I have found that trying to do all those things is just going to send you straight into burnout because you are only one person and your time and your resources and your energy are limited. And that's why I really recommend that if you are dealing with burnout, that you streamline your online presence. I can totally admit that I made the mistake of trying to show up in multiple places, but now that I'm a more experienced social media manager, I can realize how insane that is. Like, that is a ton of work because even one platform doing it really well is a job in and of itself. When I stopped trying to spread myself too thin and just really focus, I didn't even go all in. I just really focused on one platform when I had the time and the energy to build a little bit of a presence. And for me, that platform was LinkedIn. And that is actually going to be the case for a lot of freelancers, unless you already have an online presence on another social media platform, whether it be Instagram, TikTok, X, whatever. You may have a following there of ideal clients. And if that's the case, great, continue to use that. But I'm telling you, LinkedIn is a super low lift place to show up as a professional service provider and have clients come to you in some cases, which actually happened to me where I had one client find me just through my optimized profile. I don't even think I had posted anything yet. And they found me through LinkedIn and they ended up being my client for 6 years. Now, again, I'm not saying you have to be on LinkedIn if you have a presence somewhere else. That's totally fine. But it is the lowest lift way to put yourself out there and increase the odds of your ideal clients discovering you. And wherever you show up online, think of it as your online storefront. And this is a really important part of streamlining your online presence because with social media, it can very easily become very noisy. I know that you can look at what everyone else is doing and wonder, hey, should I be doing that? But as long as you keep it very clear who you help, how you help them, and how someone can work with you, that is going to be the best bet for funneling your ideal clients into a discovery call or whatever the next step is to work with you. Ultimately, wherever your ideal clients are, show up there with clarity. Your goal is not to go viral, it is to be the obvious choice for a specific problem. The fourth step to solving burnout for freelancers is to build simple systems. Now, I used to do everything manually from writing and updating contracts, sending invoices, my onboarding process. I was basically keeping all that in my head and relying on myself to go through that every time I needed to do it. And while it may not seem like a lot in the moment, it might only take 2 minutes or 20 minutes, that is taking up your precious mental bandwidth. And it is requiring you to switch tasks more often throughout the day, which is definitely not the way to work, not the smart way to work, because every time you switch tasks, your brain has to power down from what it was doing and then power up again to start focusing on something else. And that takes up so much mental energy. So, for all these little 2 minute tasks that you have in your business, try to find a way to, if not automate them, like which you can often do with things like invoices and sending contracts when you sign a new client. You can also just think about ways to get it out of your head and either onto paper or into a project management tool or into a Google Doc, even if it's a checklist, just some simple way of getting it out of your head and storing it some way so that you aren't reliant on yourself every single time the need to do these things comes up. And I want to reiterate the need for simple systems because there's definitely a lot of fancy ways to do things and automate things online these days. Just keep it really simple. Again, I mentioned Google Docs. You could also use Asana for project management. I use a tool called Dubsado for sending invoices, automating my invoices, and you can also set up an onboarding workflow for your clients. So, for example, once someone signs a contract, they get an email with all the next steps, and you're not having to manually send that. The final step to overcoming burnout is to protect your mindset. This is something that I'm always working on because there's so many layers to it and so many nuances, but it's really important to start thinking in this direction because this is at the root of everything I've talked about so far. Firstly, protecting your mindset means setting and enforcing boundaries with clients. This means clearly communicating when you're available, how you're available. Can they text you? Can they email you? Can they Slack you? And also drawing the line for yourself when it comes to holidays and weekends and time off, and really making sure that you take that. Because as much as you may love working and be a really driven person, you need time off. You need to give your brain a break. Protecting your mindset also means being mindful of any content that you consume, especially business content. Now, when I first started out freelancing, I was a copywriter and I became obsessed with copywriting. I mean, I still am, but in the beginning, it was so exciting and new that I subscribed to every podcast. I signed up for a bunch of memberships. I tried to go to all these events. And I also kept hearing about all these great ideas of things that people were doing in their business. And I just kept trying to implement all of them. And as a result, I ended up, surprise, totally burned out because I wasn't focusing on one thing and doing it really well and fully monetizing one thing. I was just spread way too thin. So instead of helping me grow, it ultimately stunted my growth and left me totally overwhelmed. That's why I really encourage you to choose a few voices that give you clarity, not FOMO. If you want realistic freelancing advice that's not going to leave you with shiny object syndrome, that's what this channel is here for. I have overcome the burnout and now I am here to help you build a business that feels stable mentally, financially, and energetically. So if that sounds like your vibe, hit subscribe because I've got more to share to help you build a stable freelance business.